A very good morning to everyone, and welcome to the Redmen Fire Protection webinar on Friday, the 1st of November. We're just waiting for a few more participants to enter. We've got quite a few today, so we'll just bear with us another minute or two as we get the final people coming from the waiting room. Just give us a couple of minutes and we'll be back in touch. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you again. We've got a fair few people coming in today, so I'll start the process now, and some people will come in through the waiting room very shortly. So thank you again for attending today. We're pretty excited about this webinar. This is part of our information sessions to our clients and potential clients about the changes with AS1851 2012 and it becoming law in New South Wales. We have a fair few people, as I've mentioned. We had over 460 register today, and we're just waiting for them all to come through now. We currently have a couple of hundred online. So I'll introduce myself. I'm James Donegan, the National Technical Director for Redmen Fire Protection. My details are there, and I've also put up our team's information as well. Please feel free to contact us at any time, either through the website, through our info@redmen.com.au email, or 1300 Redmen, and our team will be able to assist. So we'll jump into the agenda for today. A quick introduction as to who's who in the Zoom, a little bit of housekeeping. What is AS1851 2012, the legal changes and where they've come from, the government position and the FPAA's position on these changes, the Fire Protection Association of Australia. Some standard definitions, benefits and disadvantages of AS1851. I've bolded here some common and specific questions that we've been asked as a range of our seminars. So we've held 3 seminars at this time, and some of the consistent questions we were being asked, as well as in discussions with our clients and other industry stakeholders. What we're doing at Redmen to adopt to the change of AS1851. And at the conclusion, we'll have additional more questions and whatnot from there. So there's a little bit of housekeeping. As I mentioned, we do have a question and answer section, which I'm hoping will answer some of the generic, consistent questions we've been asked. So hopefully that will be answered in there. But if not, we are opening up the Q&A chat with there. So please don't use the chat, use the question and answer section of the Zoom call. That'll then allow us to monitor that and either give some answers in the background in writing, or predominantly answer them verbally so that everyone has the benefit of seeing what they are. As I mentioned, we have over 460 registered today. Zoom only lets us get up to 500 without changing bandwidths and everything. So we're pretty excited that there's a lot of information out there. And I note that we have about 70 different fire companies as well that have registered with a webinar, and we welcome our colleagues in the industry. There's such a change coming that it's any education we can share and both ways is obviously beneficial. So welcome to our colleagues in the fire industry as well. We're running for an hour today with the actual webinar, and then half an hour for questions. I'll try and keep it rolling as best I can. And if we roll over the 90 minutes, if there's a lot of questions at the end, we're more than happy to take as long as it takes to do those. But if you want to send us an email or give us a call at any time, we're more than happy to assist. So a little bit about Redmen. Redmen Fire Protection, we're obviously a fire safety services company based in Sydney, Central Coast and Newcastle. We do a whole range of things from large-scale installations of fire prevention, detection and extinguishing systems to portable extinguishers, fire safety products. We look after anything to do with your fire protection systems. Our company strives to undertake high-quality fire system testing and maintenance for our clients. So a little bit about myself. I've worked in the fire protection industry now for over 17 years. I started as a service technician, then fire panel and systems tester, bit of project management, and predominantly been doing annual fire safety statements and looking after our key customers and portfolios. I have a degree in business management, a graduate certificate in performance-based fire codes and OH&S, as well as a Cert 3 in fire protection and a Cert 4 in training and assessment. And for my hobby and when I don't have enough work to do, I'm a volunteer firefighter and I'm currently the captain. I've been doing that since I was a young guy. So I'm doing that 22 years now. So in terms of the government and industry interaction that we've been doing, I'm currently sitting on the AS1851 implementation forum through the Fire Protection Association. And we're pushing for the information that's provided by the FBAA to its members, obviously some of our colleagues on the call today, as well as helping that then to pass on to the industry and other stakeholders, be that the strata councils, property management, a whole range of different facilities managers, a whole range of different stakeholders that are going to get some information from the FBAA. So they've been diligently working on sending that stuff out as well. Our managing director, Mike, has recently concluded 3 years on the FBAA board as an elected director, and worked diligently with David Isaac on the Fire Protection Accreditation Scheme to simplify and assist the industry in New South Wales, as well as developing the good practice guide towards annual fire safety statements, which is on the FBAA website. So I direct our colleagues in the industry to that one as well for their benefit, especially with annual fire safety statements. And both of those positions are volunteer positions, so our way of giving back to the industry. So today's big question, and the reason why we have so many people on today, what is AS 1851 2012 and how does it becoming law affect you? And why is it happening now? So you'll recall some years ago in the UK, we had the Grenfell Tower fire in which over 80 people perished. And the obvious question that the governments of Australia asked, and especially the New South Wales government asked, was, okay, we've had this fire overseas. Could that happen in Australia? And what would be the implication of that? And the answer was, well, yes, it could happen. And yes, it actually had already happened. We just hadn't had the loss of life. So the Neo 2000 and La Crosse Tower buildings predominantly related to cladding and combustible cladding, which we won't want to talk too much about today. But that was one of the main drivers towards this. So the New South Wales government strived to then put a stronger baseline for building and life safety across industry. So the Australian standard itself, it has been around since 2012, obviously. In fact, it's been around before that. There was a 2005 edition of AS 1851, and the 2012 edition is what's been gazetted by the New South Wales government in law. The AS 1851 relates to routine service, and we all used to call it maintenance. It's concerned with the principle that a system will continue to perform to a design standard on a predetermined and regular basis for inspection, testing, and servicing activities. So that's straight out of the standard. It does have a 4-stage approach within it. So it relates to inspection, test, preventative maintenance, and survey, coupled with records to be kept and reports to be made, and culminating in the issue every year in a yearly condition report. That yearly condition report is not the annual fire safety statement, where there's a lot of conjecture there, but it is a yearly condition report to the AS 1851 maintenance. So a significant objective of the standard is to provide reliability of fire protection systems and equipment, linking design, installation, commissioning, and then culminating in maintenance. So the legal requirement, where the rubber hits the road, as we like to say. So compliance with the Australian standard is only legally required if they are referenced in regulation, legislation, or in a contract. AS 1851 2012 is now law in New South Wales. So it's been gazetted. It is in law. Its effective date is the 13th of February, 2025. So it's coming at us like a freight train, guys. As of the 13th of February, you have to comply with the requirements of AS1851. So it's called up in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Development Certification and Fire Safety Regulation of 2021. So this legislation from a fire perspective has maintenance, the annual fire safety statements sit within this, the ability to egress a building and final fire safety certificates, as well as a whole range of other items that are in there, but that's the ones that predominantly affect us in the fire industry as part of that regulation. So, as I mentioned, that has been in law since the 1st of January 2022, and it takes effect as of February 2025. So the specifics of the schedules and regulations are there. Notably is Section 81, so essential fire safety measures to be maintained. So I will read this out because I realise that there's it's quite small writing, but it's the most important crux of the regulation, especially for a lot of the strata managers that are on the call today. So they know the obligations of their building owners and strata committees and OCs, so they can look after them. So the owner of a building must maintain each essential fire safety measure for the building, for an essential fire safety measure specified in a fire safety schedule to a standard no less than that specified in the schedule, or for an essential fire safety measure applicable to the building but not specified in the fire safety schedule to a standard no less than what's been originally designed and implemented. So some buildings pre-1997 don't have fire safety schedules, so that has made life a little bit harder. The current consensus is that if you have the fire system in the building, you'll maintain it to AS1851, and a couple more slides talk to that. It does also call up there both the 600 penalty units for a corporation and the 300 penalty units for an individual that would be relevant if you were to be fined by council or whatnot. So the consequences are pretty dire. You definitely aren't going to like it if you get hit with one of these fines. So the fines are, the maximum is 600 penalty units for a corporation, such as an OC, or for an individual, it's 300 penalty units. Currently, one penalty unit in New South Wales is $110, which means that the maximum fine is currently $66,000 for a corporation or $33,000 for an individual. And that could be per infringement. If the council really wanted to, they could, or whoever it is that's imposing these fines, be fire brigade, be council, whoever that ends up being, it could be that high and multiples of those. So why is routine service important? I mean, it goes without saying that looking after your fire equipment is important, but as you can see there, over time, if people don't look after their buildings, you can have things occur that you're not aware of. So here we have a valve that's got a tree growing through it. So needless to say, it hasn't been looked at for some time and actions haven't been taken. So why is it important? Undertaking maintenance and recording this to demonstrate system and equipment performance is pivotal to satisfy these objectives. Maintenance is essential to achieving ongoing performance. So again, if we don't undertake the maintenance over time, you've got an increased risk of the system just physically not working. So simply assuming that your systems will work and putting your head in the sand is not a great idea. We do come across sites in Redmen where we take over and we found that the maintenance has been lackluster, and we do find opportunities to actually then have to get in and find a whole range of things that we have to do to bring it back up to baseline. So I've put in some links here and really just wanted to highlight the New South Wales government's position. This is all taken from the New South Wales Fair Trading website. So again, if you go into the housing and property section and reforms to fire safety regulations, or even a simple Google, you should be able to find this information and be able to and go from there. But just so you can see what it is, and I appreciate it is small, mainly for building owners and developers. If we jump down to that very bottom one, because the other items relate to fire engineering reports and a few other ranges for class 2, 3 and 9C buildings at the top, but notably at the bottom is that in February of 2025, the requirement is to look after these things. And I'll jump through to the final one there, which I've made a little bit bigger. So that first slide is not as relevant, not for this particular maintenance discussion. Owners must maintain essential fire safety measures in all types of buildings except single dwellings in accordance with the procedures in AS1851, where the maintenance activity is addressed by the standard. So as I mentioned before, if you have a system on site and it's captured under that, let's say it's a fire panel or a sprinkler system, you're supposed to do the works in accordance with the Australian standard, and that's taken directly from the Fair Trading website. So how should building owners prepare for the requirement to maintain in accordance with AS1851? So again, this is straight from the website of Fair Trading. If you need to complete an annual fire safety or a supplementary fire safety statement, you're required to maintain the essential fire safety measures in your building. That's always been there. It's just the requirement now is you have to comply with the requirements of AS1851. For some owners, no preparation is going to be needed at all. If you have contracts with practitioners and you're maintaining them in accordance with AS1851 already, routine service, even though this is not a current mandatory item. So some clients, it won't be an issue at all. If measures are not being maintained to AS1851 2012 in buildings needing an AFSS, the standard is not mandatory until the 13th of February. So again, you don't have to do it until then. We strongly advise for some of the higher level testing, such as 5 yearlies. Clients are getting ahead of that now, so they've got an opportunity to have them covered before we get hit with the 13th of February and trying to then rush to get compliance at that point in time. So we've been having discussions with a lot of our clients and doing some of these things now. And if an annual fire safety statement is not required for your building, building owners should still ensure that the fire safety measures serving the building are adequately maintained. And the expectation is that that's done to AS1851. We have some clients that have a fire panel, as an example, in their building that is not a requirement of the fire safety schedule, and they don't even have to do an annual fire safety statement. We're still pushing for AS1851 compliance for our insurance as well as their insurance to make sure they're covered as well. So the government expectation on fire practitioners. So for us in the industry, same website, Fair Trading is telling practitioners that if you're doing design, obviously since August of last year, you've had to do the FSD is whatnot. That's been there for a while now. And persons maintaining essential fire safety measures in Class 1B to 9 buildings must do so in accordance with the procedures in AS1851 2012. So again, don't take it from us. Please go onto the New South Wales Fair Trading website and to capture some of this information as well. So based on the previous slide, the government is giving fire practitioners that advice. So as I said there, the Fair Trading link. Redmen will advise of the services it can offer and will assist our clients in them complying with these requirements. And we'll only be able to provide statements of maintenance for activities we have undertaken. So if particular items aren't undertaken, we may not be able to sign off on that. But look, we obviously want to have a discussion with each of our clients because each of their sites is different to others. So we'll work with our clients to help them as best we can through this transition. So obviously where it's become challenging is the industry position so far with AS1851. Most fire companies have undertaken elements of AS1851 as opposed to the standard in its entirety. So that's made life a little bit challenging commercially, as it was commercially accepted to only undertake items wanted as opposed to what's in the standard. And I'll utilise a lot of the water-based standards and items because such as hydrants and sprinkler system testing, because clients didn't want to take the risk of potentially blowing out a hydrant system as part of a 5-yearly test, as well as insurance obligations as well. We'll talk to some of those items later. And the other challenging part for us as an industry is that AS1851 is not a training document. So it's a few hundred pages. There's tables within those, and each line has its own unique aspect, which can be challenging for our technicians as well to have interpretation of how certain tests can be undertaken. And if you talk to any of your fire companies out there, there'll be elements that they historically don't do or do a different way. So examples of a couple of the activities that we currently do on a monthly basis. So a monthly sprinkler system has 19 different items plus some sub-elements to those that have to be done every month. A monthly pump test has 20 items within it, as well as some sub-elements of those individual testings. And if you look at the logbooks and as part of AS1851, you'll see some of the items that need to be signed off on. So the FPAA is the Fire Protection Association of Australia. They are positioned as the industry body. One of the main industry bodies in Australia is that they have a code of conduct of which we are a member of the FPAA, and we've abide by that code of conduct. And the maintenance of fire protection systems and equipment is fundamental to system and equipment performance. The association therefore considers that all stakeholders should adopt and use AS1851 2012 for the maintenance of fire protection system and equipment included in the standard. So New South Wales, although it's only putting this into law in February, it's been law in Victoria and been law in Queensland for quite some time. I believe Queensland adopted it in 2016. But for New South Wales, it takes effect as of the 13th of February next year. And the FPAA was able to put together an introduction of AS1851 into New South Wales regulation. So this is on the FPA's website. I encourage our fire colleagues on today to go to there and ask any questions of the fire industry there at the FPAA if they have any queries as well. Again, they held a seminar yesterday, which I was involved in as well. So there is information on their website as well as on ours. So what's changed? AS1851 is 212 pages, and it speaks to specific tasks and elements for service. So the industry has adopted a best practice approach to the standards to suit clients' desires historically, and tests that were not undertaken for good commercial reasons are now required. So how will it affect your business? So technically, performance is covered in the annual fire safety statement, whereas routine service and maintenance is covered under AS1851. Do these two align? Well, yes and no. They do collide, but I'll give you some of the challenges now that we see as a fire protection business and what we're doing in this space. So the challenges are that AS1851 captures all building classifications as well as the regulation and not specific classes of building types. So there's no emphasis on how it will affect the site to do certain tests. And some tests can lead to failure and have been avoided by sites historically. And I'll nominate the hydrostatic testing every 5 years of a hydrant system. So speech intelligibility testing, which is where we make announcements to make sure that an EWIS system can be heard and understood, and people understand what's being said to them and told to them, so they can evacuate the building or stay put, depending on what the type of event is. So in a nursing home or a hospital versus a car park versus universities, all of them have their own complexities as to how you would do those tests. Setting off an EWIS system in a hospital for many, many hours to undertake it based on the size of it, you're not going to get away with that. And a lot of clients are going to find that challenging to do. Universities, obviously, we can do things in the breaks, but and car parks are renowned for having a lot of echoing, and it can be quite hard to achieve intelligibility in certain car parks. I've spoken about hydrostatic testing, and obviously if they damage and break, and a lot of the time they're underground or they're in buildings, so if they do blow out, it's a problem. Tanks, if you have fire water storage tanks, they need to be completely drained and new liners put in every 10 years as part of this standard. So in drought times, you're going to have a lot of water wastage, and we have clients that have in excess of 700,000 litres of water sitting in a fire water tank or even dual tanks. So telling them to go and use up to 1.5 million litres worth of water takes time. It's very, very involved and can be quite problematic. And 25 yearly sprinkler testing. So again, most of our service clients are 3 to 5 year contracts. 25 yearly sprinkler tests, they're time consuming, and access to each sprinkler area, having to go in, drain down, take a sampling of the sprinkler heads, send them away for testing to make sure they're still working, and then come back. And obviously, because it's only every 25 years, having that data available can be challenging, especially if they haven't done it, especially in older buildings. So I wanted to speak to one of the challenges we have in little things such as monthly testing. So as an example, the monthly fire panel test, item 1.4 of the standard, says to simulate an alarm condition and confirm that all required common or general visual and audible indications operate. So an interesting thing there is we have a lot of clients right now who prefer a silent test every month. So our tester will come in and say, I'm here to test the fire panel. Can I set the alarms off this month, or will I do a silent test? And a lot of the time, due to what's happening in the building or the type of building, we're asked to do a silent test. Technically, as part of the standard now, we're not supposed to do that. So we are going to work with our clients as best we can and do what we can, maybe changing our testing times and whatnot. But every client's going to have their own obligations there to work through as well. But I just wanted to give that one example that is one line within one item of one part of the standard that we need to now comply with in full. So some of the different issues, items that we deal with. So what's in it? So the standard itself can be quite challenging to read, and I don't expect that most of our colleagues, our clients here are going to be looking into this too specifically. So it does talk to all the different areas there that are there. But I'll go through some of the key definitions. So a term you're going to hear a lot from the fire industry is baseline data, and it's been out there for some time, and a lot of our colleagues are trying to get that information and help their customers out. We're definitely trying to do so. But baseline data is derived from approved design for comparison to data from inspection, testing, and survey. So retrospective baseline data is listed in the beginning of each section of AS1851. So as an example, in a sprinkler system, it's the block plan, a systems interface diagram, a pressure gauge schedule, and a water supply valve list. That information is critical for us to know what is on a site, to be able to then look at it and say, okay, here's what we need to go and test to and make sure. So for example, the block plan will tell us the duty requirement of a hydrant system or of a sprinkler system, and we then have to go and make sure that the pressures and flows are achieved as part of that annual testing. So baseline data is architectural plans. It's a whole range of those initial information as part of commissioning that we try to collate, but doesn't always exist. And I've just taken an extract there from one of the standards on what fire alarm baseline data could be. And as you can see, it goes down to R. There's a lot of information there. So battery capacities, battery manufacture date, installation date. There's a whole range of different things, and that's just for detection alone there for fire alarm systems. Notably, AS1851 requires that defect reporting is done within timeframes. So the fire contractors are going to have to give you, if there's a critical defect, has to be confirmed in writing to the responsible entity within 24 hours. Non-critical defects are recommended to be rectified as soon as possible, and any non-conformances should be done before the next yearly condition report is coming due. So the yearly condition report is the statement of critical and non-critical defects, non-conformances, and missed tests. However, survey as part of AS1851 is not intended to be the annual fire safety statement. So again, that's there. Those two paths go aside. One is performance, one is maintenance, but the survey is not a part of the annual fire safety statement. It's a different process. One of the key definitions, again, is competent persons. So the standard itself says that routine service of fire protection systems and equipment shall be conducted by competent persons, and competencies may be demonstrated in accordance with the Australian qualifications framework, such as Certificate 2s or Certificate 3s through people such as Fire Industry Academy that our colleagues can do. So 3 stages of routine service. I've taken this extract and I'll leave this up on the screen here. Stage 1 is system design, installation, and commissioning, typically being done on the FSD space now, and obviously design and install. The routine service schedule takes over in stage 2 as part of AS1851, and we work down to routine service, identify and report on any activity failings, undertaking the yearly scheduled servicing, as well as then a yearly condition report. And then stage 3 is regulation and application, such as an annual compliance statement, which in New South Wales is the annual fire safety statement. So they do acknowledge the annual fire safety statement. Admittedly, it's an Australian standard, so it does speak holistically across all jurisdictions. However, the annual compliance statement for New South Wales would be the annual fire safety statement. So again, 2 different reports. and that's taken straight from the Australian standard AS1851. So I've put here some of the items that are there. We're not trying to capture all of them because there is so many. This is a table, figure 1.12 or figure 1.12, all the different frequencies that come up. Now, a lot of the time we're doing a lot of these tests already, but there is some tests there, especially the annuals and some of the annuals, the 5 yearlies, 10 yearlies, and 25 yearlies that are going to be new for a lot of clients. So sprinkler systems, sprinkler baseline data, pressure gauge schedules, annual systems interface testing, sprinkler alarm valve overhauls 5 yearly within the test, as well as a 25 yearly sprinkler test. Pumps, annual pump overhauls, 2 yearly battery replacement of starter batteries, and 5 yearly overhauls on the pump sets. Hydrants, hydrostatic flow testing, which is where we pressurize the hydrant system to 1.5 times its working pressure and make sure that it holds that pressure if there was to be a fire, as well as booster flow testing, physically bringing a fire truck or a pumping appliance to site and operating your booster to make sure that you're getting the required pressures and flows out of that to make sure that if the fire brigade has to attend for a fire, they can operate effectively and safely if needed. As well as 5 yearly hydrant landing valve servicing / replacements. I'll be honest with you, most of the time now we undertake a replacement because if we undertake the service and it fails, you're still up for a new one anyway. We have to drain the system down. It's commercially typically easier and cheaper to just do the replacement. But we'll talk to each site specifically to that, depending on their quantity of hydrant landing valves they have. I spoke about water storage tanks before, 10 yearlies, having to drain them down and undertake new liners. That's not a 5-minute job. That can take quite some time and can be an involved exercise. So, and coordinating that, especially talking to your insurer and making sure that they're happy for the fire system to be down for as long as it may be down for in the interim. But again, we'll work with each individual client on those. Fire detection and alarm systems, again, just a couple of points. Annual occupant warning system speaker circuit impedance testing and 5 yearly speech intelligibility testing. So as I mentioned before, going around and making sure that any of the items, any of the areas, you can actually understand and hear what's being asked of it. So special hazards is a section within AS1851. Typically, this is for sites that have data rooms, any sort of fryer lines or commercial size kitchens, undertaking room integrity testing annually to make sure that the gaseous systems are going to be able to retain in that area for a period of time, typically 10 minutes, or if it's a CO2 system, 20 minutes. Nozzle and fusible link replacements, as well as 10 yearly hydrostatic testing of any of these cylinders. Some good news. So some of the good news there is that sections 8 to 11 of the standard relates to lay flat hoses, fire hose reels, fire extinguishers, and fire blankets. And predominantly these 4 sections, we don't believe that the industry is going to see too much of a challenge in these because most clients are doing the requirements of AS1851 in full for those for hose reels, extinguishers, and blankets. And to be fair, a lot of sites now, unless they're large industrial complex sites, have lay flat hoses. So again, mining sites would probably predominantly still have lay flat hoses on them, but they've been taken out of a lot of sites over the years because the fire brigade typically just won't use them. So different issue. Passive fire systems, though, can be quite challenging. There's a whole range of different types and range of items. So whether it be lightweight construction, fire seals, fire collars, fire smoke and solid core doors, and fire-rated pillows. Typically, this is where the baseline data is non-existent or not available. So the developers out there and stratas, try and gather as much information as you can for the building. If it's available, try and do a freedom of information check as well through council if needed to get some of the original as-builts. Try and have as much information as you can, especially for the strata managers, because I know that you guys are the ones getting asked for this information regularly. And for us as the fire contractor, where and what are those items? And in some circumstances, destructive testing may be required and access is challenging. Obviously, we avoid that as best we can, and we very rarely have to do that. Mechanical systems, monthly testing of kitchen exhausts. So for our clubs and pubs, and even some nursing homes that have kitchen facilities, talking to your mechanical providers, making sure they're undertaking this testing. The discussion at the moment is that a lot of the mechanical side of things will be challenging because they're not doing AS1851, because they only sit within one section of it as opposed to the entirety, which most of the fire contractors do. And then undertaking that systems interface testing, so the cause and effects matrix, to make sure that what is supposed to happen is occurring. And then emergency response facilities, so evacuation diagrams, evacuation procedures, and training documentation has to be checked off now as a part of AS 1851. So for our colleagues in the fire industry, that's section 14. It's definitely prudent they have a look at that. It does differ to Australian Standard 3745 and to AS 4083 for healthcare facilities. So strongly recommend, if you're working in that space, that you have a look at some of the requirements of AS 1851. And predominantly most of our clients are already doing some of those issues there as well, but we'll talk to them individually depending on what they have on their site. So I did say at the start, and I tried to get through that as quickly as I can to allow some more time for questions and whatnot. Some of the common questions that we've been asked so far from our clients go like this. So will these changes affect my annual fire safety statement? And it has the potential to, depending on the essential fire safety measure and any defects that may be found as part of the increased testing regimes. So if you had to do something and you haven't historically been doing it, you may find that you've got to now go and get involved and do some other works, but it's going to be on a site-by-site basis. Can I get an annual fire safety statement without these tests, without the additional tests occurring? So the answer to that is, as long as the accredited practitioner in fire safety, so the person undertaking the audit, can confirm that the essential fire safety measure continues to perform to its original design criteria, that would be okay. So again, it is two different items between maintenance and annual fire safety statement. One is validating performance. And again, they do obviously interrelate, but the accredited practitioner will have to make their own determination as to whether they feel comfortable that the system will comply to the performance requirements, differing to signing off on the maintenance as well. So why is it additional testing now? As a lot of these tests were not done under the standard industry accepted practice, you may find that there's some tests that you haven't done historically that you now need to do. Again, the sky's not falling in. There's a lot of our clients that are doing a lot of these tests, such as hydrant flow testing, annual detector testing, sprinkler flow testing, even down to battery replacements of pumps. Again, there's a lot of these items that won't be too problematic, but for some sites that have historically not done things such as a 5-yearly hydrostatic test, that may be one they need to work to as well. And I spoke about hydrostatic tests. We need to get waivers to undertake these tests. So what if your insurer won't allow you to sign the waiver? This will be a discussion for your insurer. Obviously, the insurance industry is across this. They're aware that AS 1851 has become law. And obviously they're looking after buildings predominantly all over the country as well, a lot of the major insurers. So if they push back on it, then I would suggest you ask them what do they do in Queensland or in Victoria and go from there. But again, that will be one of the questions, and who's going to take that liability per se. Another common question, wasn't it always law? It was always law to maintain your building. So under Section 80 of the old Environmental Planning and Assessment Act and Regulations, or the reg, it was always there under Section 80 to maintain. However, they've now specified that they've now prescribed AS 1851 2012 and that version of 2012 to do so. So again, a lot of fire contractors were doing a lot of these parts, but again, it's about making sure that there was a consistency across industry as well. Another question, could there be any issues, insurance implications if I don't maintain the AS 1851? Obviously, we're not an insurer or a broker. You'd have to speak to your insurer on that. My personal take on that is that insurers are renowned for trying to find ways out of of paying claims. So where possible, the ability to be able to point the finger back to your insurer if there was an issue, if there was a fire in the building, and saying, yes, we've complied with all the requirements of AS1851, will definitely make your life easier if there was to be a claim. But again, that's not advice. That's we just recommend you talk to your insurer to see what their expectations are of you. How will it be policed? So this is not yet determined. However, it's presumed that it'll be the local councils and/or Fire Rescue New South Wales. It could potentially be a requirement of the accredited practitioner fire safety as part of the annual fire safety statement process, or someone similar to them to actually have to sign off to say, yes, the works have been done in accordance with AS1851. So for that reason, again, it's not yet determined. It doesn't show it there. Our assessment at this point in time would be that it would be the local councils, because they're the ones already doing the annual fire safety statements, and they'll be the ones expected to get a form or some sort of statement from the building owner to say that they've done the works in accordance with AS1851 under their legal requirement to do so. Do we have technicians that can do these extra services? Absolutely, we do. And we're actually growing our team at the moment as well to make sure that we're keeping up with some of these extra tests, because some of them are quite bespoke and quite specialised. And we're utilising our own staff and a range of subcontractors on some other items to assist us, especially during this initial transition period. Does this mean more visits to my site? And we get asked this question a lot from the stratas, because I appreciate it is quite challenging to get on the site. Fire is one of these very interesting places. If you have an air conditioning problem, you ring your air conditioning guy, he comes out. If you have a plumbing problem, you ring your plumber, he comes out. When you're talking about fire protection, we have testers, auditors, repair guys, carpenters doing doors, plumbers doing water work, sprinkler fitters doing sprinkler work, detection guys, lighting guys. We have a whole gamut of different technicians that have to attend site. And sometimes we can't always schedule it at the same time. So there's about 7 or 8 different trades, maybe even more, that we consistently have to get out to sites. So it does depend on the fire safety schedule you have for your particular building. We do try and do as many of the services as we can at the one time. If that means sending additional resources there, we do try and do that. But again, as I mentioned, because there's just so many different types of technicians that and their skill sets, it can be challenging to do so. But where possible, we are doing as much as we can on the one day. Another question, we currently don't undertake monthly or 6 monthly services due to cost and inconvenience. Will I have to do the additional services? So the regulation is quite clear on this. It's the building owner must ensure that any essential fire safety measure in the building, if it's in AS1851, will have to be completed. So as I mentioned at the start, if you have a fire panel on your site, regardless of if it's in the fire safety schedule, the expectation is that you're testing it. That's what the Fair Trading website says at the moment, and that's our interpretation of the legislation. But again, we do have clients that have fire panels and they don't want to do it monthly. Typically, we don't do that. We've always strived to do things to AS1851 so that we can cover our insurance obligations as well, and can sleep easier at night as well, because we have that shared desire to make sure our clients are being looked after. So the biggest question, and really for our strata managers, please take note, because I think this is going to be the one that they're going to be explaining to a lot of their clients. Who is responsible for ensuring compliance with AS1851? And the answer is it's the building owner. So the building owner has the legal responsibility to ensure compliance with AS1851 as per the legislation. So it's not the fire contractor, it's not some other person, it's typically not even the strata agent. It is the building owner's responsibility to make sure that they are complying with their requirements. How strict will the implementation be, and is there a grace period? So again, as mentioned before, it takes effect as of the 13th of February. It's technically in law now. There is no grace period. So come that date, the requirements of AS1851 are there. So how will these changes affect testing of fire safety measures? And it depends on the measure. It really does. So as I mentioned before about the simple one with a monthly test and doing an audible test, it may just change the time of day that we do said test, or it may change that's quite a quick test, as opposed to letting it run out for some time. But look, we want to be pragmatic, and we're going to work with our clients as best we can and do some risk assessments and gap analysis to see what needs to be done to achieve their requirements as well. Because again, the buildings are running their own organisations and operations, and we need to be part of the solution, and we definitely don't want to be part of the problem. So we will work with our clients as best we can. So what if I don't have baseline data? We mentioned baseline data before. Trust me, you are not alone. That is the most consistent question we're getting asked. And it's probably the biggest challenge that all of our fire colleagues are seeing there as well as our strata building owners. Again, changing over time, what information was originally required. There's a whole gambit of changes occurring in the New South Wales government space in relation to design, making sure that information is readily available. And the previous building commissioner, David Chandler, was advocating that. I know that a lot of the strata companies are across what's been happening in that space. So they're aware of that. So what happens if a building or facility does not comply with AS1851? The building owner could be fined as per the legislation. So as I mentioned before, that legislation is the Environmental Planning and Assessment Regulation Design Practitioners Certification. And the amount of panel units, as I mentioned, is either 300 for an individual or 600 for a corporation. And we have seen a lawyer that provided some context to that, and they were of the belief that it could actually be per offence that they could typically be done. That's not our interpretation of it, but again, we don't know enough about that, and we're not lawyers. So again, our strongest advice is to comply with AS1851 and not have the problem. But again, the building owner could be fined as part of the legislation, and your insurance coverage may be affected, as mentioned. If they can find a way to not have to do that, then I'm sure they typically will. So why haven't we talked about exit signs and emergency lighting? So the maintenance of exit signs and emergency lighting is covered under Australian Standard 2293 Part 2. And it's therefore not mandated as part of, it's not in the regulation at all for this particular one. So again, we don't have to worry about that at the moment. So what now? Well, the obvious answer is don't panic. We definitely don't want to see people going out and going, oh my God, we're not compliant. We've got to do all these different things. Definitely do not panic. Redmen is here to help. We obviously want to help as best we can to make sure we get you through to the compliance part of that. How can we do that? Well, our team's reviewing every site that we have currently. And again, some sites won't be affected too much at all because they're already doing some of these tests, or it may be just a couple of extra tests that they have to go through. And we're happy to meet up and go through with our clients either online or on site to understand what it is that they need to do and comply with it. Redmen's adoption has been quite a pragmatic response. As I mentioned before, we're not going to be so militant to the point where we can't achieve things. We're going to have a discussion with our clients and come and sit with you, speak with you, understand the requirements and where you may have some challenges and what we can do to assist along that journey. Redmen uses Simpro, so our CRM that we use has a lot of assets, a lot of data information that we have there for us to be able to retain and look at before we go to the site, so we know where we're up to, as well as tells us when things are coming due as well. So we go from there. We've been growing our team, as I mentioned before, to be able to support. Our staff have been trained in both Certificate 2 and Certificate 3 in fire protection. So a lot of our service technicians now, or most of our service technicians now, are actually complying with that. And that allows us to tick that competent person box that's within the standard as well, so that we have some sort of formality there for our technicians, as well as offering a higher level of service because we have more trained guys. There's no requirement for that currently in New South Wales. That was a commercial decision that Redmen made to make sure that our technicians are across the gambit of what they have to do and their skill sets. Obviously, we're working closely with the FPAA and understanding the New South Wales government interaction that they're doing and trying to get as much information as we can from them and passing that on to our clients as quickly as possible. And we have further benefits to you as our clients. The Redmen website, www.redmen.com.au. We've recently put up a whole range of our technical bulletins and education in our education section. So at the top right of our webpage, please go up there. We've got 24 documents right now that are common questions that get asked, and a lot of them from strata companies. A lot of consistent questions, whether it be smoke alarms, fire doors, egress paths, dampers, what is an AFSS, a whole range of basic information that gets asked of us somewhat regularly, and we're updating that somewhat consistently as well as best we can to make sure that we have relevant and new information, and as well as doing other events like this moving forward for our customers. But please, please, please jump on our website. There's some information there. Read it at your leisure. Print it, use it, especially our fire colleagues. The more of us that are across some of these items, the better it is. So it's on our education section within the Redmen website. As mentioned, we're increasing the size of our team so we can provide a faster response and a higher level of customer service. So we want to make sure that that we're looking after our customers, and we appreciate that there's a lot happening in this space right now. As I mentioned just a minute ago, our guys have Cert 2 and Cert 3 fire protection, and it ticks that properly qualified and competent person's box, and it allows us to achieve a higher quality of our works that we undertake for our clients. So again, not a requirement yet as to whether licensing will become required in New South Wales. We're not sure. That hasn't happened as yet, but it's a commercial decision we made to make sure our technicians are across it. Redmen actually offers a comprehensive maintenance package as well. So our clients love this. One of the biggest benefits for that on our next slide is that it covers all servicing, testing, and AS1851 requirements, plus extra offerings. And the only things it excludes is either acts of gods or act of God, or issues caused by a third party. So, which is typically something that would be covered either by your insurer or others. So let's just say someone goes on site and creates they hit a sprinkler pipe and now you have a flood, will come to site, but that typically that attendance would be covered under the insurance and they'll be paid for by that. So that's a great way for scheduling and payments, because that way you know exactly what you're up for. It's all calculated out and it's paid consistently across that, and even includes emergency call outs for things like the fire panel beeping or whatnot as well. So definitely that brochure's on our website. I'm happy to send that out to anyone that would like that or wants to have a discussion about that. But that allows us to capture a lot of these things, which is great. So in conclusion, and we'll come to the questions in a moment that have been asked, it's our aim to be as transparent and helpful during this change as we can be. Again, we're a fire protection company. We're here to help. That's our role. We want to help you tick the boxes you need to do, because again, fire protection can be seen as a bit of a box ticking exercise sometimes. So let us help you tick those boxes, and we want to be your compliance alliance. We really do want to help align with you and be your partners to make sure that you feel comfortable, you feel safe, that when you go home from your workplace or you go back to your actual your house and your residency, that you feel safe, that you're being looked after, and you can support that. So thank you very much for attending today. I'll jump to the questions now and see where they're up to. So just bear with me. So yep, let's go through. Let's have a look here. Okay, and I know that some people have been typing answers as well. So okay, so in case of building having FE, I'm guessing that's fire extinguishers, do these monthly testing required to be done by a fire service provider? Currently, we're carrying out inspection in 6 months for fire extinguishers, hoses, and fire alarm panels. Do we need to change to monthly and pay extra? So no, there's no requirement for extinguishers to be done monthly under AS1851. You do have to do them 6 monthly. In terms of whether you have to be qualified, the requirements are that you have to be a competent person. So that's what's in AS1851 as mentioned a moment ago. So again, strongly recommend that. You're using someone that's got insurances, someone that knows what they're talking about, and ideally someone that's got either the Cert 2s and Cert 3s and have those insurances to know what they're doing. Dampers and smoke control system testing. Yeah, thank you for that question. There's definitely The mechanical space, I strongly recommend that anyone talks to their mechanical providers, making sure that they are looking after the requirements of AS1851. Again, we're not a mechanical services company. We're a fire protection company. We do work with a whole range of fire mechanical companies, so strongly recommend you talk to them and understand the requirements there for smoke control and fire dampers. We obviously do interfacing with them as well, but go from there. Don has asked, do you engage the building private certified to ensure compliance with the BCA? So Don, no, this is not a BCA related item. This is only talking to the maintenance of the fire protection systems or essential fire safety measures on site. So no, it's not up to us as the fire contractor to engage a private certified. They're at arm's length for a whole range of reasons. So Don, no, that's not for us, unfortunately. Will exit emergency lighting be adopted into AS1851? I can't speak to that. That would be a question for either the FPAA or something like that. But no, we don't look after that at the moment. Don's asked again, tell me a building owner who knows what AS1851 really means or has read and understands AS1851. Agreed, Don. There's obviously plenty of customers that don't do that, and more importantly, they should look after come to a fire protection company that is across it and helps them to make sure they understand it and prove to them that they know what they're talking about, to be able to make sure that they feel comfortable in what they're up to and what they're doing. So we strongly recommend that building owners are across their requirement legally to make sure that they know that there is a requirement to comply with AS1851. And again, we wouldn't expect that they're going to be reading it themselves. As part of the standard, is it the owner's responsibility to maintain a fire asset register? It's within the Australian standard AS1851 to have a fire asset register. So yes, it is a requirement to do that. Who maintains that register is obviously up to the building owner, but it's typically done by the fire contractor. If Redmen are signing off additional measures, lift, aircon as part of the inspection, do those additional contractors need to be coordinated to be present for the test? That's an involved question. Typically, it depends on the system itself. So if a fire panel has to be put into test mode for the mechanical air contractor or for the lift contractor, we may need to be there to do that. But again, when we're not talking about the actual endorsement for the annual fire safety statement. We're talking about the endorsement for maintenance. So if there's a requirement for us to be there for mechanical for maintenance, then yeah, that may be a requirement. But it just comes down to the specific measure that's being looked after and what we may need to do. It doesn't have to be us. But again, if we're talking about the annual fire safety statement, it depends what they need to do to undertake those testings. Surely Australian Standard 2293 Part 2 will affect the AFSS Part 5 as without the emergency exit lighting, the POT can not be endorsed. I don't know what POT is, sorry. Again, 2293 is not part of AS 1851. The maintenance of a exit emergency lighting system would be a requirement of a accredited practitioner to make sure that the system is going to continue to perform. So I'd strongly recommend that testing still does occur to make sure. And if I'm guessing that for the I'm guessing PO2 is path of travel. Again, yes, that would make a logical sense that but it is a different standard of performance to the requirements of the environmental planning assessment regs for paths of travel that are there. So we as Redmen would always push that lights are being done in accordance with 2293 Part 2 on a 6 monthly and annual basis. And as part of our accredited practitioners going to site and undertaking the annual fire safety statement, they want to validate that the system is going to continue to perform. And part of that is obviously the testing of that. Rod's asked nothing on fire doors. No, fire doors are definitely in there. They're part of the passive section. Requirements for fire doors are definitely within AS 1851. And the main probably point of that is that in sole occupancy units, that can be done annually as opposed to 6 monthly. So if a building owner was to read that that they had to be done annually, 6 monthly as part of AS1851, for sole occupancy units, you can get an exemption to only do them every year. So that's within the standard as well. What would happen if during a test you will no longer have the required flow from street due to Sydney water over time reducing the flow due to leaks in the system? Yeah, that's a very good question. We have had that actually happen a few different times to our clients now. We had a client who lost probably 50% of the pressure and the flow in their hydrant system due to the fact that a very large building was being put in down the end of the street. So you'd have to speak to Sydney Water. We have got clients that now their street hydrants aren't achieving the requirements, or they've had a whole range of things. The street hydrant is not part of your measure that you have to look after. The street hydrant is being looked after by either Sydney Water, Hunter Water, Central Coast Water, whichever area you are within New South Wales. Again, I would strongly recommend that you talk to Sydney Water. They do have a minimum performance they're supposed to provide. But again, if it's about street hydrants, that's not within the remit of Redmen, unfortunately. So my strongest advice would be to talk to Sydney Water. If you're talking about the fact that the street hydrant's no longer giving pressure into your hydrant system inside, the only way to come up and comply with that when maybe pumps and/or tanks. And we've had a few clients that have had to do that as well because there's been a reduction. There was a pressure reduction scheme that occurred probably about a decade ago across the Sydney network to bring down the pressures in the network. The reason for that was they were having a range of blowouts. So they wanted to try and reduce the amount of blowouts they were having as well. So they did reduce the pressure some time ago, but so I don't know that person's name, but to Anonymous who asked that question, more than happy to have a discussion with you after. My number's on the screen, or just ring our office and get in touch. We're happy to help where we can. In terms of 6 monthly emergency management training for wardens and occupants, does this now mean that both sessions will need to be face-to-face and both sessions require a practical evacuation as opposed to yearly under 3745? I don't know who's asked that question. Yes, the requirements of AS1851 for evacuation is there. There's items there for diagrams, there's items there for that. Feel free to give us a call. We'd be happy to go through your requirements as to what you have and what you may need to do as a part of your requirements there. If 3745 is listed on your fire safety schedule, then you are going to have a clash there that we may need to have a discussion about. Ben's asked, if the building does not have a sprinkler system and other safety measures, does that require them to have one installed? I think Mike may have already started typing a question to that one, but he'll answer that. But Ben, to answer your question, any requirement to upgrade a building will be driven either by a DA or a CDC, or a fire order issued either by the fire brigade, Fire Rescue New South Wales, or by the council itself with a notice of intent to undertake a fire order. Someone's asked, can I replay this meeting? It's been very interesting. I'd like the other committee members to listen. Thank you for that. Yes, we will be putting this up both on our website and on YouTube, and we'll put the link there as well. So yes, by all means, they can watch. I'm hoping to keep it somewhat interesting, as I know it's quite a bland topic, but thank you for saying that. That's been interesting. That's great. Thanks, Ethan. That's very kind of you to say that it was good. Where do we get a copy of AS1851 for some bedtime reading? It'll definitely put you to sleep, that's for sure, AS1851. It is available on Australian Standards website, is SAI Global. You can get that from there. It's a couple of $100 from memory. So, yep, I'm not sure how much it is. I think it's a couple $100. I'd strongly recommend you talk to your fire company, and if you have any specific questions about what they need to do. We do have a table in the slide a little bit earlier that I spoke to that has that has the different frequencies. But if you wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of AS1851, then you could obviously buy that online. We can't share it because it's a copyrighted document. So, unfortunately. Yeah, Bianca, we're definitely going to put this online. So thank you for that. Don's asked, if the hydrant does not provide the pressure, then we are seeing that councils are requiring on-site tanks. Yes, that's correct. So the difference between street hydrants and hydrants that are using the street pressure and flow. So again, street hydrants will put to one side. That's where coverage is achieved by the in-ground hydrants. Putting that to one side, if you're relying on the pressure and flow from Sydney Water, then and you see a reduction because you're at the end of the main or a whole range of different issues that may come about, yes, they are requiring that you would put in a tank and or pump to achieve that. So we have come across that. I've probably dealt with that maybe 6 or 7 times in the last 10 years. And again, it's a substantial outlay because you have to find the space for the tank, you have to find an area to put it, obviously, and then concrete, the tank installation itself, connection then to pumps to achieve the requirements of the individual standards, be that for either sprinklers or hydrants, predominantly hydrants. So we've seen that happen. Moro's asked, I hope I've pronounced that right, apologies if I haven't. Moro's asked, what about lightweight construction services, penetration, structural steel elements and ductwork protected with fire protection coating such as passive? Yeah, really interesting one there. The biggest challenge on that is going to be baseline data. So if you've got a relatively new building that's got some fire protection coatings on it, strongly recommend you keep that documentation and any installation certificates you have close at hand to make sure that you can get through that. Same for lightweight construction. I mentioned destructive testing before. Lightweight construction can be one of those challenges to validate that you're using double thickness gyprock typically in ceiling spaces, whereas and any other service penetration. So any asset registers you have, structural steel elements, yeah, again, it depends specifically on the item itself. But the passive part of AS1851 does have a lot of those items there. So we'll have to have a discussion per site to see what we can capture. When interconnected fire alarms are needed under a council fire order, are wirelessly interconnected alarms acceptable? Many thanks for the webinar. Mike's putting an answer to that one now. It would depend on the fire order specification. I'd strongly recommend you talk to that. An interesting component of fire orders is that you don't require an FSD to do an endorsement as part of the fire order process. But Mike's answering that one for me now in the background as well into a bit more detail. Someone's asked, is it law to have a sign for an emergency assembly location? I'd have to have a look at that one specifically. I know that if you have a requirements under 3745, that there is a requirement to have that. So if your fire safety schedule does reference that you definitely do that. My advice would always be to definitely have that because it's a great way of doing accountability if there was to be a fire or any other type of emergency, to make sure that you can get people to one location and do some sort of accountability check if needed. But they're relatively cheap, those signs, and finding the right spot to put them, talking to your provider and contractor to make sure that it's not sitting at the front of the driveway if that's going to be where the brigade's going to turn up to use the booster. So have a discussion with us, give us a call, send us some photos. We're happy to assist with that where we can. Testing of sprinkler heads in a 24-year-old building, will this need to be carried out next year? Yes, it would be. So the requirements of AS1851 come due as of February. So if you don't have a 25 yearly and there's one that should have been due for the building, then it's going to be due next year. If you don't get to wait another 25 years to do your 25 yearly. So that would be the advice here. So unfortunately, you won't get till 2050 and go from there. But feel free to give us a call. Happy to help on those as well and what's involved in doing those 24 yearlies. Does any authority responsible for building inspection, like civil defence or any other fire departments, will impose penalties in case it does not comply with AS1851? Yeah, so we don't know. We believe it will be the councils and obviously fire brigade will take quite an involved role in this, I believe, because they're the ones going into the building. So they're predominantly going to want to see that hydrant systems and sprinkler systems and fire panels are working. So those critical systems are going to work during a fire. So we don't use civil defence here. It's obviously most of the Middle East uses that terminology. But again, I believe it'll be both the councils and the fire brigade that will look after that one. Joe's asked a question. G'day, Joe. Where is AS1851 endorsed by the owner contractor? Will this be referenced within the AFSS or a separate document? Joe, currently we don't know. I think we're on revision version 4 now of the annual fire safety statement template form. So it's currently not sitting on there. I believe it's going to be a separate form that will be required to be endorsed. I'll use the term endorsed as opposed to issued to the building owner. But yeah, the building owner is responsible to send a form into a sort of jurisdictional body, which I believe will be council, as I mentioned. Rod's asked, AS1851 precludes any audit of original certification of passive elements in a building and precludes any elements not accessible. Many inspectors don't realise his comments. Yeah, Rod, look, it depends on what's on part of the fire safety schedule for the building and what information can be ascertained. So if you have baseline data that validates something, there is some testing methodologies you can adopt to be able to look for things, be that cameras, be that baseline data, be that access panels being installed if required. A whole range of things that can be done. But it'll come down to each practitioner as to how they're going to adopt that. In a building of 154 apartments, would the sprinkler heads be tested in each apartment? Okay, so the answer to that is there's 2 questions there you've asked. So the physical sprinkler head doesn't get tested in the apartment itself. It's only as a part of this physical system down, be that in the plant room or the fire room that has the service there, especially on the monthlies and annuals. The sprinkler heads that get done as part of the 25 yearly being done is where we take a sampling, which is 14 different sprinkler heads across an installation. So in a building of 154 apartments, would the sprinkler heads be tested in each apartment? No, but you will see that we'll take a sampling of that. A good contractor may try and do that in the common areas as opposed to in each of the individual units, but that would come down to some of the requirements of that individual test. So hopefully that answers that question. Thanks, Rod, for giving the information there. That's great. Section 12.1 and the clauses there. Thank you. And I think we've got through most of them now. That's been answered. I believe Mike would have answered a few of them before. Yeah. Just going through here. If there's any other questions there. Yeah, Mike's still typing an answer there to Rod's question. Fran, in the case of strata, I assume the person appointed to sign the annual fire safety statement is the person ultimately responsible as the owner's agent for ensuring that all standards are met for AS1851 2012. Look, Fran, yeah, it's definitely, that's a pretty logical assessment of what it will be. I would believe that that's the way it's going to be, and I appreciate the strata industry is a bit of a meat in the sandwich on this one. I do not envy you, that's for sure. I thought it was hard enough in fire, but you guys have definitely got the raw end of the stick. So the person appointed, yeah, is typically going to be the owner's agent. I dare say that would be the person that's going to be required to do it. So my only advice to you would be that making sure that before you sign off as an owner's agent, in the case of strata, that you've got plenty of documentation to support that attempt at signing off on it. So yeah, that's obviously a commercial decision for you personally, but making sure that they've got that. Go from there. Melissa, thank you for your time and efforts. Thank you. That's helpful. That's awesome. At least if we get one person happy, then that's a win. So thank you for that. Anonymous, thank you again. Okay, awesome, guys. I'll leave the chat open for another couple of minutes. We've still got 184 people online, and I know I've tried to get through that somewhat quickly, because I appreciate that Friday mornings are a very busy time. So thank you again. Cheers, Jody. Thanks again. And Jared, cheers. If there's any other questions, I'll leave the chat open, but thank you again for coming through. As on the screen there, you've got our website and our info at Redmen. Please feel free to give us a call or send us an email. We're happy to assist where we can. And if there's any other questions, I think there was one that just popped up. Tell us a bit more about 5-yearly tests. So again, thank you everyone. If you need to jump off, by all means do so. There's a whole range of different 5-yearly tests that need to be done. I recommend you have a chat with your fire company specifically to talk to some of these different items. Again, the 5-yearlies come up in sprinklers, detection, hydrants. There's other 5-yearlies in mechanical. There's 5-yearlies in a whole range of extinguishers is probably the best example of where 5-yearlies come up. So by all means, give us a call or pop us an email and we'll be able to give you a bit more information. And I'll direct you back to our education page on our website, which speaks to some of the 5-yearlies as well, such as hydrostatic testing, which is probably the biggest one that we get asked about because of that insurance requirement and whatnot. Thanks, guys. Appreciate all the good comments there. Saeed has asked, I hope I've pronounced that right, apologies if I haven't, is monthly testing for FIP required for non-monitored systems? Yes, it is, because fire panels fall under AS1851. It's definitely a requirement to test the fire panel monthly, 6 monthly, annually, and then 5-yearly, and other items that will come up as part of that as well, such as batteries every 2 years. Rochelle, is there anything we can get to prove we did this webinar so we can claim it against PD as a trainer? PD, professional development, I'm guessing. Yep, you can, Rochelle. We'll send out a, I think we send out, I'll ask our moderator to see what we're going to do there and go from there. Again, it's not a CPD per se, but if you send us an email, I'll be happy to get something across to you to try and assist if you'd like. So hopefully that helps, Rochelle. And yep, let me know an email. Well done. Yep. So just we'll get it sent out to you, Rochelle. That's easy. And go from there. But again, if you just email the info at Redmen 1 and just attention it to me, I'll make sure you get one sent back across to you pretty quickly. Fran's asked, is there any change to smoke detectors in solar occupancy units that are not connected to an FIP? No, so there's requirements in AS1851 for annual smoke alarm testing. So let me just reread your question. Is there any change to smoke detectors in SOUs? Yeah, so I'll use the definition smoke alarms, which are both the detector and an alarm in there, your stock standard residential, smoke alarm versus a smoke detector. So the smoke detector will always go back to a fire alarm panel or a fire indicator panel. So your smoke detectors will have to be connected to a fire panel. But if you're talking about smoke alarms, Fran, we have a really clear thing on our website in our education section about the requirements for 10-yearly replacement of smoke alarms that come up. Most of the manufacturers, well, in fact, all of the manufacturers of smoke alarms talk to replacing them every 10 years and having a 10-year life. So hopefully that assists you there. And I'll leave it open. It's 10:19. I'll leave it open for another couple of minutes. We've still got about 125 people on, which is great. So thank you for staying. If there's no other questions, can we continue doing silence monthly testing after the 13th of February? Yeah, look, I think that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. Again, we want to work with our particular clients, and we'll do what we can with you. So by all means, reach out to, if you're an existing client or even if you're not, please reach out. We're happy to work with you as best we can, and maybe we can do some other testing at different times or find a different thing. As a note, for some of the fire practitioners still online, Fire Systems Certifier is something that's coming. We believe it's been delayed. But again, if you're in the FSD or FSA space, there's obviously, which is design and assessment, we believe, well, obviously FSC is coming. And that's something that you need to look out for, because the requirements of FSC may be quite onerous. So for any of our fire colleagues still online, by all means look into that. The 10-yearly fire detection test is not on the schedule. Where would this be? It should be part of AS1851. If you're a fire guy or fire practitioner, I'd direct you to AS1851 there, but there is a requirement, I think, from memory, Appendix G, maybe where you're looking for the 10-yearly one. So have a look in Appendix G of AS1851. But again, our website has the education section, so you can see it on there too. That might answer that particular question as well that's been asked. I guess Fred is asking for standalone battery-operated smoke sensors, which is not connected. Yeah, so again, the 10-yearly replacement of battery-operated smoke alarms is a part of AS1851, and we'll definitely assist you there. And again, our education website, and I'll direct any of the fire companies that are still on now. You're more than welcome to utilise our education section and put their brand on it if you'd like. The more information that gets out there to building owners and tenants for fire safety, the better it is. So I direct you to our Redmen website, www.redmen.com.au, and look in the education section. There's plenty there. And if you have any questions, or you'd like copies of anything else, or a different type of topic, if you're a strata and it doesn't answer a specific question you have, by all means, send it through to our info@Redmen. The more information we can put up for everyone, the better it is. So happy to help where we can on that one. I'm hoping that between myself and Mike's answering all the questions as we've been going through, that's been able to help everyone out. I'm hoping that everyone's got any questions answered. Arnold, what about the items stated in the AFSS are not one of the 36 modules listed by FBAS? Should they be maintained by an APFS and signed off by competent persons? Okay, so 3 different questions there. I'll answer that one, then we might call it a day. So the annual fire safety statement, as I mentioned before, is about performance and sits to one side. If you have one of the 36 listed essential fire safety measures, you have to undertake the requirements of looking after that and getting that performance assessed, and go from there. Should they be maintained by the accredited practitioner? No, there's no requirement for the APFS to be the person that actually undertakes the maintenance. They have a requirement to make sure that they're looking after that before they endorse the essential fire safety measure, that they've got all the requirements they want to be able to make sure it's done. And the sign off by a competent person, yes, it would be the building owner's responsibility as part of AS1851 to make sure that whoever's doing their work is undertaken by a competent person. That's in the standard in AS1851, and obviously it's good commercial practice as well to make sure that that's what's happening. So I hope that answers that question for you there, Arnold. If there, as I mentioned, we'll call it a day there. I stuck to time, which is great. If you have any other questions, please send them through to our info@Redmen. We've had 70 questions today, which is great, and hopefully that's answered all of them for you. By all means, and I want to thank everyone again for their attendance, and have a lovely weekend. Thanks again, guys. All the best.